In this lesson, we're going to continue discussing printing. If you'd like to follow along, go under the File menu to Open, and in the Sample Files folder, scroll down to 1502, Set Up Your Own Custom Pre-Flight Profile, and just click Open. What is the pre-flight feature in InDesign? It's an automatic way to check your document for a variety of potential problems. It's working right now. I can tell because it says no errors down the bottom of the document window. What we want to do is set up our own custom pre-flight profile. Let me go under my Options menu right next to No Errors and go to Pre-Flight Panel, and it opens the Pre-Flight Panel. And it's letting me know that right now Basic is working. That is the profile that is being used. There are other profiles that are listed here, but I'm going to go under my Options menu of the panel and go to Define Profiles. One of the things that's really nice is if I want to be using exactly the same settings that my printer is using for their pre-flight, I could actually get their profile. They can email it to me, and I could go under my Options menu at the bottom of the profile listings and just choose Load Profile, and it's going to allow me to find it and load it right in. Let me hit Cancel. But why don't we talk about the options that you can set up for your own profile. First, let's create our own profile. Click the little plus sign at the bottom of the profile listings and just name it. I'm going to call it ABC Printer. I'm going to go to the General section. Basically, this is just a description of the profile, and it's just letting me know that this is a copy of the default profile using all of the default rule settings. Let me click the disclosure arrow again and go to Links. In the Links section, it's a good thing to check for missing or modified links. So let's leave that checked. Well, this is a print document for a printing press. I'm really not concerned at this point about inaccessible URL links. Let me uncheck that and close the Links section. Let me go into the Color section and see what's there. Transparency blending space required. Why don't we check that and click the disclosure arrow? If it's a CMYK document, which it is, I want to make sure that RGB is not part of transparency. So let me just click the disclosure arrow to close that. Cyan, magenta, or yellow plates not allowed. Well, that would be for a job that's possibly black and white, or maybe it's black and a spot color, or just spot colors. We're not going to check that in this case. This is a CMYK only document. Color spaces and modes not allowed. Let me click the disclosure arrow and then check that. And it says RGB. Yes, we don't want any RGB, and we also don't want any spot colors in our CMYK document. So let me check all of them and hit the disclosure arrow. Spot color setup. Well, we're not using spot colors, but we could do this. Check it and make the maximum spot colors allowed 0. And let me click the disclosure arrow. And how about registration applied? Registration is a swatch color in the swatches panel that is really meant for only printer marks, like registration marks and crop marks. So you don't want that applied to regular objects. People do that quite often by accident, thinking that they're applying black. Why don't we scroll down a little bit here and go to Images and Objects. Image resolution, well, that's definitely important if you're printing on a printing press. Let me just click the little disclosure arrow. Color images, we really want our minimum resolution to be 300 for this particular printer, and the same thing with grayscale. And 1-bit images, which are also called monochrome, we'll make that 1200. So that's things like a scan of a logo in black and white. Let me close the image resolution section. Non-proportional scaling of placed objects. One thing that can happen is as you're scaling an image, by accident it's thrown out of proportion. This will check for those out of proportion images. Uses transparency. Well, this particular printer has no problem with transparency. What else is there? How about minimum stroke weight? Maybe I have a bunch of hairline rules in my document. I want to make sure that they're actually going to print, so I don't want them to be less than 1/8 of a point. Interactive elements. Well, it's not an interactive document. I'm not going to be concerned with that. How about we go into the text section? Overset text. Definitely want to check for overset text. This would mean that some of the text in a text frame, there's no room for it, so it overflows the frame. And some of my text is not going to print. It's not even in the frame. Missing fonts, let's leave that checked. We want to know if our fonts are missing. A glyph that's missing. Maybe I had text that was using one particular typeface, and I changed the typeface universally throughout my document, and my new typeface doesn't have certain glyphs. This is going to let me know that. That's a good thing. And font types not allowed. Why don't we check that? Maybe our particular printer doesn't allow TrueType, or something called Type 1 CID. Why don't we check those so it's checking for it? Non-proportional type scaling. This would mean anywhere that horizontal or vertical scale are being used, it's going to let me know, unless both are being used at the same time to keep it in proportion. Minimum type size. I might check this even if I wasn't going to press, because maybe I have a minimum point size that I can use for my legal text of 6 points. So I'm going to check that for sure. Let's go down to some other important things. How about in the document area, you want your page size and orientation to be 8.5 by 11 or whatever it is. Because in documents in InDesign, you can have different orientations and you can have different size pages. Maybe this is part of a brochure and all the pages have to be the same size. Bleed and slug setup. For our bleed, we want a minimum of 0.125 inches. Our printer said we can't have any less than that, and this will check to make sure that we have the required bleed if something bleeds off the page. And last but not least, all pages must use the same size and orientation. Why don't we check that and then hit Save, and then OK. And now we need to apply our profile. ABC profile, right away it found 9 errors. Not only in the panel, but also down the bottom of the document window. Let's see what that's about. Color space not allowed, 9. Oh, it's all of my images. I never converted them to CMYK. They're RGB. Let me click on the page number next to it, and it's actually going to select that image. So I would be able to find out very quickly which images are RGB and fix them before I send it to my printer so I don't get a call. And of course, in setting up your own profile, you should talk to someone in the pre-flight department at your printer, because they may be able to provide you with their profile, which, as I described earlier, you can load in to InDesign, so you'll be using the same profile. We're going to continue to discuss printing in the next lesson.